3. Pesca's face and manner on the evening when we confronted each other at my mother's gate were more than sufficient to inform me that something extraordinary had happened. It was quite useless, however, to ask him for an immediate explanation. I could only conjecture, while he was dragging me by both hands, that, knowing my habits, had come to the cottage to make sure of meeting me that night, and that he had some news to tell of an unusually agreeable kind. We both bounced into the parlour in a highly abrupt and undignified manner. My mother sat by the open window, laughing and fanning herself. Pesca was one of her especial favourites, and his wildest eccentricities were always pardonable in her eyes. Poor dear soul! From the first moment when she found out that the little professor was deeply and gratefully attached to her son, she opened her heart to him unreservedly, and took all his puzzling foreign peculiarities for granted, without so much as attempting to understand any one of them. My sister Sarah, with all advantages of youth, was, strangely enough, less pliable. She did full justice to Pesca's excellent qualities of heart, but she could not accept him implicitly as my mother accepted him for my sake. Her insular notions of superiority rose in perpetual revolt against Pesca's constitutional contempt for appearances, and she was always more or less undisguisedly astonished at her mother's familiarity with the eccentric little foreigner. I have observed, not only in my sister's case, but in the instances of others, that we of the young generation are nothing like so hearty and so impulsive as some of our elders. I constantly see old people flushed and excited by the prospect of some anticipated pleasure, which altogether fails to ruffle the tranquillity of their serene grandchildren. Are we, I wonder, quite such genuine boys and girls now as our seniors were in their time? Has the great advance in education taken rather too long a stride? And are we in these modern days just the least trifle in the world too well brought up? Without attempting to answer those questions decisively, I may at least record that I never saw my mother and my sister together in Pesca's society without finding my mother much the younger woman of the two. On this occasion, for example, while the old lady was laughing heartily over the boyish manner in which we tumbled into the parlour, Sarah was perturbedly picking up the broken pieces of a teacup, which the professor had knocked off the table in his precipitate advance to meet me at the door. "Oh, I don't know what would have happened, Walter," said my mother, "if you had delayed much longer. Pesca has been half mad with impatience, and I have been half mad with curiosity. The professor has brought some wonderful news with him, in which he says you are concerned, and he had cruelly refused to give us the smallest hint of it till his friend Walter appeared." "Very provoking it spoils the set," murmured Sarah to herself, mournfully absorbed over the ruins of the broken cup. While these words were being spoken, Pesca, happily and facilely unconscious of the irreparable wrong which the crockery had suffered at his hands, was dragging a large arm-chair to the opposite end of the room, so as to command us all three, in the character of a public speaker addressing an audience. Having turned the chair with its back towards us, he jumped into it on his knees, and excitedly addressed his small congregation of three from an impromptu pulpit. "Now, my good dears," began Pesca, who always said good dears when he meant worthy friends, "listen to me. The time has come. I recite my good news. I speak at last." "Hear, hear," said my mother, humoring the joke. "The next thing he will break, mamma," whispered Sarah. will be the back of the best armchair. I go back into my life, and I addressed myself to the noblest of great beings, continued Pesca, vehemently apostrophizing my unworthy self over the top rail of the chair, who found me dead at the bottom of the sea through cramp, and who pulled me up to the top. And what did I say when I got into my own life and my own clothes again? Much more than was at all necessary, I answered as doggedly as possible, for the least encouragement in connection with this subject invariably let loose the professor's emotions in a flood of tears. I said, persisted Pesca, that my life belonged to my dear friend Walter for the rest of my days, and so it does. I said that I should never be happy again till I had found the opportunity of doing a good something for Walter. And I have never been contented with myself till this most blessed day. Now, cried the enthusiastic little man at the top of his voice, the overflowing happiness passes out of me at every pore of my skin, like a perspiration, for my own faith and soul and honor. The something is done at last, and the only word to say now is right or right. It may be necessary to explain here that Pesca prided himself on being a perfect Englishman in his language, as well as in his dress, manners, and amusements. Having picked up a few of our most familiar colloquial expressions, he scattered them about over his conversation whenever they happened to occur to him, turning them in his high relish for their sound and his general ignorance of their sense into compound words and repetitions of his own, and always running them into each other as if they consisted of one long syllable. Among the fine London houses where I teach the language of my native country, said the professor, rushing into his long-deferred explanation without another word of preface, there is one mighty fine in the big place called Portland. You know where that is? Yes, course. The fine house, my good dears, has got inside it a fine family. A mamma, fair and fat, 3 young misses, fair and fat, 2 young misters, fair and fat, and the papa, the fairest and fattest of all, who is a mighty merchant, up to his eyes in gold. A fine man once, but seeing that he has got a naked head and 2 chins, fine no longer at the present time. Now mind, I teach the sublime Dante to the young misses, and my soul, bless my soul, it is not in human language to say how the sublime Dante puzzles the pretty heads of all 3. No matter, all in good time. And the more lessons the better for me. Now mind, imagine to yourselves that I am teaching the young misses today, as usual. We are all 4 of us down together in the hall of Dante, and the 7th circle, but no matter for that. All the circles are alike to the 3 young misses, fair and fat. At the 7th circle, nevertheless, my pupils are sticking fast, and I, to set them going again, recite, explain, and blow myself up, red hot with useless enthusiasm, when a creak of boots in the passage outside, and in comes the golden papa, the mighty merchant, with the naked head and the 2 chins. My good dears, I am now closer than you think for the business. Now, have you been patient so far, or have you said to yourselves, deuce, what the deuce, Pesca's long-winded tonight? We declared that we were deeply interested. The professor went on. In his hand, the golden papa has a letter, and after he has made his excuse for disturbing us in our infernal region with the common mortal business of the house, he addresses himself to the 3 young misses, and begins, as you English begin everything in this blessed world that you have to say with a great awe. Oh, my dears, said the mighty merchant, I've got a letter from my friend, Mr. The name has slipped out of my mind, but no matter. We shall come back to that. Yes, right. So the papa says, I've got a letter from my friend, Mr. And he wants a recommend from me for a drawing master to go down to his house in the country. My soul, bless my soul. When I heard the golden papa say those words, if I had been big enough to reach up to him, I should have put my arms round his neck and pressed him to my bosom in a long and grateful hug. As it was, I only bounced upon my chair. My seat was on thrones, and my soul was on fire to speak. But I held my tongue, and let papa go on. Perhaps you know, says this gold man of money, twiddling his friend's letter this way and that, in his golden fingers and thumbs. Perhaps you know, my dears, of a drawing master that I can recommend? The three young misses all look at each other and then say, with the indispensable great awe, to begin, Oh dear no, papa, but here is Mr. Pesca. At the mention of myself, I can hold no longer. The thought of you, my good dears, mounts like blood into my head. I start from my seat, as if a spike had grown up from the ground through the bottom of my chair. I address myself to the mighty merchant, and I say, English phrase, Dear sir, I have the man, the first and foremost drawing master of the world. Recommend him by the post tonight and send him off. Bag and package. English phrase again. Send him off, bag and package, by the train tomorrow. Stop, says papa. Is he a foreigner or an Englishman? English to the bone of his back. I answer. Respectable, says papa. Sir, I say, for this last question of his outrages me, and I have done being familiar with him. Sir, the immortal fire of genius burns in this Englishman's bosom, and what is more, his father had it before him. Never mind, says the golden barbarian of a papa. Never mind about his genius, Mr. Pesca. We don't want genius in this country, unless it is accompanied by respectability. And then we are very glad to have it. Very glad indeed. Can your friend produce testimonials, letters that speak to his character? I wave my hand negligently. Letters? I say. My soul, bless my soul. I should think so, indeed. Volumes of letters and portfolios of testimonials, if you like. One or two will do, says this man of Belgium and money. Let him send them to me with his name and address. And stop, Mr. Pesca. Before you go to your friend, you had better take a note. Banknote? I say indignantly. No banknote, if you please, till my brave Englishman has earned it first. Banknote? Says papa in a great surprise. Who talked of banknote? I mean a note of terms, a memorandum of what he is expected to do. Go on with your lesson, Mr. Pesca, and I will give you the necessary extract from my friend's letter.